Hello again, Happy New Year. 'Tis the season for the time-honored YouTube tradition, everything I made in the previous year videos. I will probably never make this type of video again, but I'm doing it this year because I only started this channel in fall of last year, so most of the things that I made last year, nobody has seen. And I like watching these type of videos by other creators, but this was kind of a lot of work to pull together. And I figure if I am actually consistent in the coming year with doing an update video every month, then by the end of the year, next year, everybody will have seen anything anyways. So this is my opportunity, my one shot to do this type of video for this channel. Also, a more accurate title for this video would be everything that I made for me in 2025, because I made the decision not to include everything that I made as gifts for other people, doll clothes and little things that my kids request, because I don't feel like digging through their toy bins to find them. Christmas ornaments, things like that, because I've already packed them away. Just things that I don't really have on hand anymore. I don't have photos of most of them, and so we're not including them. Also, I'm not a particularly fast crocheter. I feel like it takes me a long time to finish most projects, and I don't really like to rush myself, so there isn't going to be like 20 sweaters featured in this video. I just don't make things at that rate, and I don't want to. I will be going through it month by month so you can see what I finished when, but there are some months that I didn't finish anything, and I'm okay with that. At the end, I'll also do a little breakdown of the total number of each type of project that I completed this year, along with a grand total. Okay, let's get right into it. In January, I completed 2 projects, 1 hat and 1 pair of mittens. The hat is just a really simple granny square beret that I kind of made up myself. I used yarn that's been sitting in my stash for quite a number of years, and I'm 99% sure that it's Noro, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a really beautiful mix of colors though, so I mainly just wanted to use it up and get it out of my stash. And of course I added a giant pom-pom on the top. And the mitts that I made, I talked about in my first YouTube video. It is the Stad mittens, which I made in Wild Earth Yarns Ashley 8-ply. My mom brought back these 2 skeins from her trip to New Zealand, and I made these mitts out of them. This is a really beautiful free pattern that I would recommend to anyone, and I'm actually thinking about making a second pair of these this year, just because I really like how these ones turned out, and I wear them all the time. This is probably my most worn pair of winter mittens, and I feel like I could do with a second pair. Moving on to February, I only completed 1 project that month, and it was this black and white striped tote bag. This was just a free pattern from the Yarnspirations website. I did slightly modify it by adding these little neon baubles, but I made this in Rico Fashion Jersey in black, white, and I think this colorway is called bright green. Just a really functional, useful little tote bag that I also sometimes use as a project bag. Next, in March, I joined the Birds Are Back make-along that Michaela from Galanthus Knits here on YouTube was hosting. So I completed 2 items, a shawl and a balaclava that were both for her make-along. The shawl is from Morit magazine issue number 5, and the pattern is called the Wind Shawl. I made mine in BC Garn Bio Sheetland, which is the brown, and then this kind of mustardy yellow is Cascade 220 light fingering. I think the colorway is actually called olive oil, but I ended up holding the brown BC Garn double just to make a little bit of a thicker, denser shawl, and then it ended up being giant, almost like wearing a blanket, which I love. That is my favorite style of shawl. This is probably one of my favorite things that I made last year, and I wear it all the time. Once the shawl was done, I ended up with 1 extra skein of the BC Garn Bio Sheetland, so I decided to make myself a little matching balaclava. This is just a self-drafted pattern. I basically just made a bunch of granny squares, sewed them together, and then added crochet ribbing at the bottom, and it fastens with 1 little button right under the chin. I really like wearing the balaclava and the shawl together as a little matching set. Moving on to March, I only completed one project, and it was the texture stripe slipover from Inside Crochet number 176. I made mine in Kensington Prairie Farms alpaca boucle with a red for the collar and bottom hem, and then a nice medium brown for the body of the sweater. This is a really beautiful pattern, and I actually ended up making it a second time in May, the next month. This first version, I was really off gauge and really had to heavily modify it to make it kind of like the cropped length that I wanted. And even though it's super cozy, you can obviously tell that there's absolutely no stitch definition in this version, so I knew I wanted to make it again. So in May, that is exactly what I did. I finished 3 projects that month: another sweater vest, a project bag, and then a full sweater. I'm gonna start with the sweater because it's another one of my favorite pieces that I made last year. It is the Fleur sweater by Sandnes Garn, which is, in my case, 138 tiny granny squares that are sewn together to make a really beautiful sweater. I started this sweater in January and it took me until May to finish it. I made it in the recommended yarn, which was Tin Purgant and Tin Silk Mohair. And I did a slightly modified size in that I did size large in the body and size medium for the arms. This is such a beautiful sweater. I wear it so often and it is worn so well so far. I would love to make another one in a different color, maybe like 2 or 3 years from now, just because 238 granny squares, I'm still not recovered. So after finishing this beast of a project, I wanted something a little bit more mindless, and I decided to try and use up some scrap yarn by making a little scrappy drawstring project bag. I have absolutely no idea what all these different scraps are from. I just dug through my little bin and started making different squares and piecing them together. I use this as a project bag and it's very cute and very useful. And then finally, I did another version of the texture stripe slipover, but this time I tried to pick a yarn that was closer to the sample image that they have in Inside Crochet. So I ended up using some like mystery acrylic yarn that I found at a thrift store. But now you can actually see the beautiful stitch combinations that they have you do for this pattern. This version is actually the one that I ended up wearing the most in this past year, mainly because when I made it again, I made it a little bit wider just so that I could wear it over top of more variety of dresses. Moving on to June, I only completed one project that month, and it was a very, very heavily modified sweater pattern from Morit Magazine number 6. The pattern is called Ifito, and originally I think it was like worsted weight and full length sleeve, full winter sweater pattern. But this was June, and I had just bought a bunch of Lanigato like 100% linen yarn from my local yarn store. So I decided to take that pattern and modify it into a summer t-shirt. This pattern is really cool in its construction. The front is basically just a plain crew neck, but the back has 2 triangular panels that crisscross and meet at the shoulders. So the middle of the back is completely open. And when I saw that, I thought it would make a really nice like summer layering piece to throw over top of like different camisoles or sleeveless dresses. So that is what I did. I'm really happy with how this turned out, but I absolutely hated working with linen and I don't think I will ever do it again. I've kind of had this pattern in the back of my mind when thinking about things that I want to make in the coming year, so I might make it again on gauge and as the pattern intended as a winter sweater. We'll see. Moving on to July, and I finished 3-ish projects that month. The first one was another pattern from Morit Magazine number 6, and it was this pair of neon socks. I made these using some black scrap mohair that I had in stash, and the neon yellow is from Copper Spoon, and it is their fingering sock yarn in the color Limesicle. This is another one with really cool construction. You actually crochet these socks flat, doing a lot of slip stitch ribbing, so it's super stretchy, and then join along the bottom of the sock. I wear a lot of dark colors and a lot of black, so sometimes I really like a neon bold accessory to just kind of liven up my outfits. So super happy with these socks and how they turned out. And the next project that I finished was another like self-drafted using up scraps type of thing. It's just a really basic like tube wrap scarf that I made using Tunisian knit stitch and using up a bunch of Chester Knit superwash that I had in my stash. I basically just crocheted a long rectangle and then did some surface crochet to join down the middle to make a very cute little circle scarf. This is another one that I get a ton of wear out of during the winter. I actually just wore it this morning walking my kids to school. And then finally in July, I bought my daughter and I each a Labubu that month. So I started making little clothes and accessories for them. And I think they turned out pretty well. This is the first thing that I made. It's basically like a little bonnet that looks like a flower. And then I made probably like 5 or 6 of these little toque and collar slash scarf combinations, just using different scrap mohair. But this was super fun for me. I make a lot of doll clothes and like clothes for stuffed animals for my daughter, and this was the first time I kind of made something at that scale, but for me, for something that I owned. So I very much enjoyed it, and these type of projects are amazing for using up those little scraps that are sitting in your stash. Now we're into August, and that month I completed 2-ish projects. Again, more Labubu clothes. I made some little pinafores with tiny buttons, a bunch of little sweaters and cardigans. I just grabbed like the first 2 that I found, but I probably made 10 or 11 little outfits and accessories like this over the course of the month. And these are all like self-drafted patterns, obviously. And then the last thing that I made was a stuffed 1 and a stuffed K for my kids to hold for their back to school photos that we take every year. These patterns are from Ravelry and they're by Crystal Krukert. She has a bundle with all of the numbers in it, and then I just bought the Ks separately. My daughter was entering grade 1 this fall, and then my son started kindergarten. I started doing this the previous year by making a K for my daughter, and then I realized I basically committed to making these every single year as they move through the grades, for as long as they'll allow me to take back to school photos of them. But these are really nice patterns, and they make for really cute decor in my kids' rooms. And both of these are just made in the Rico like amigurumi cotton, and I let my kids choose what colors they wanted. And then for the next 2 months, so for all of September and all of October, I did not finish anything. I had a ton of works in progress going on during that time, but I didn't manage to complete any of them. So we'll just skip right to November because there's a lot. In November, I've completed 5 projects, which feels crazy until you think about the fact that I was basically working on all of them for the 2 months leading up to November. The main thing that I finished that month, and the reason that I didn't really finish anything until then, was that I was doing some pattern testing for Sarah Dudek for her Circle St. Malo vest. And I finished mine early November. I used Estelle Highland Alpaca Fine held with cones from Kensington Prairie Farms of baby alpaca. And for my version, I chose to do the turtleneck with short sleeves. In her pattern, she also has options for long sleeves or for doing a really cool looking like steeked hood, but I chose this version and I am super happy with how it turned out, even though it took so much time. I started this pattern testing, I think at the beginning of October, and then wasn't finished until midway through November. And that's with dedicating all of my time to this and completely dropping all of my other works in progress. But I'm super happy with how this project turned out. It's another one that I ended up, oh, hello. It's another one that I ended up getting a lot of wear out of once it was finished. This is my cat, Corin. Got a little tail in the background now. But anyways, once I was done this beast of a colorwork project, I went back to working on all the other works in progress that I had put on hold to finish that. And the first thing that I finished was this Moomin colorwork scarf. This was from Crochet Now, issue 116. And I basically just used the colorwork chart that came with that issue and freehanded the rest of the scarf myself. But the yarn used for Moomin was just scraps from my stash, and then the brown was Ella Rae Classic Wool Superwash. I think I started this in early September, and yeah, didn't finish it until November. But still lots of time to get some wear in for winter and fall with that one. And once I was done, I ended up again with an extra ball of yarn once the scarf was finished, so I made myself a little matching hat. Next, I finished another work in progress that I had had since the beginning of fall, which was the Lisbeth sweater, which is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I made this using Lopi yarn. It's a big beast of a sweater. I made it super oversized, but it's got some really cool color blocking and visible joining down the front and the back of the sweater. Now that the weather is starting to get cold here in Vancouver, I think I'm gonna get a lot more wear out of this one. We don't tend to get the really cold weather here until like January, February anyways, so finishing this in November was perfect. And then finally for November, just a little spontaneous self-drafted iPhone Pocket dupe like everybody was making on Instagram during that time. Once Apple released those like product preview photos, I kept seeing all the crocheters and knitters on my Instagram feed coming up with their versions of this, so obviously I had to do my version too. I made mine in leftover Rico fashion jersey that I had used for making the black and white striped bag earlier in the year. And I actually get a ton of use out of this as well, and it looks super cute wrapped around the handles of my bag. And then finally, we hit December and I started working on my big crochet advent project, which is not yet done, so I'm not showing it here. But my final finished project of the year is not actually crochet, it is a pair of knit socks. So this was my first time knitting anything ever that wasn't just ribbing on another garment. I just did the basic sock number 1 pattern from the Summerlee sock book, and this is using Flat Sock Christmas metallic self-striping yarn. I finished these in time to wear on Christmas morning, which I was super happy about, and in general I think they turned out pretty well. There's some mistakes in the first sock especially, and I think my gauge was a little bit off in the second one. But I'm really excited to try knitting another pair of socks because I really enjoyed this process and I really like the finished project. So that's it. That's my year of crochet plus 1 knitted object. So now that we've gone through everything, let's look at some numbers. In total, last year, I made 7 accessories, 3 bags, 6 garments, 2 pairs of socks, although 1 is knitting, but we're gonna count it, and 3-ish random things for a total of 21 finished projects in 2025. And again, that's not including like things I made as gifts, Christmas ornaments, things for my kids, etc. But let's just say 21 finished projects for me last year. I'm actually kind of surprised that the number is that high. That feels like a lot, but overall I'm really happy with everything that I made last year. I don't think there's anything in the pile that I was like dissatisfied with once it was done, or that I didn't end up wearing for garments once it was finished. So that's awesome. I have no idea what I am going to make going into 2026. I am not a planner. You will never see me make one of those planning what I'm going to make in 2026 type of videos. I like to just go with my heart as each month comes and make what speaks to me at that time. So I do not know what 2026 will hold for me in terms of patterns and projects, but thank you to anybody who has watched this video. Hopefully I'm able to upload it in a timely manner, because I know a ton of other creators here on YouTube have already filmed and uploaded their 2025 recaps because I've been watching them and enjoying them. So hopefully this is up in January, and I will see you again soon. Bye.